And I think as women, you do have a maternal instinct. Some women do, some women don't. I definitely have it.
But that's important to normalize too, because some women that don't then think that
they feel
something's
guilty.
Yes. They think something is wrong. I've worked with clients like that too, that they don't have that like desire or instinct, and it's like something must be wrong with me. No, nothing's. I am extremely excited for this episode of Quiet the Clock, and I am extra excited that we get to be in person because we were not sure if that would happen. So it's so nice. The energy and your presence is so amazing. And Jen and I connected because my incredible team member, guru of everything, best friend, found your YouTube video where you documented and talked about your egg freezing. And, anyone that is having conversation around this, cultivating conversation around this, like we want to be connecting to. And I've connected you, like you walked in earlier and I'm like, I feel like I know you already. We've been on one call, connected briefly, but it's like, I think that's so telling when you have those connections. So I am so grateful and excited that you are here, and we have lots we want to be talking about. But first I want you to just share more about you, because you are sort of this epitome of forging your own path and going off like the societal expectations of what you should be doing. So I would love for you to share with the audience more about that.
No pressure. First of all, thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh.
This is so fun. I love doing these, and it's just so amazing connecting with you. And you're right. Like the moment I walked through the door, I was like, why? Why do I feel like I know her forever?
We're friends.
Yeah, we've been friends for years, and that's obviously not the case. So Jennifer Morilla, I own a marketing education platform, and I teach women, specifically women, how to start, grow, and scale their online businesses.
Amazing.
I work with service providers, entrepreneurs, small business owners, agency owners. That's not how I started though.
I know. That's that's where you are now. How did the journey to get there?
Oh God. So I started my career as a travel blogger. And I was like one of the original bloggers. I mean, influencers now are what bloggers used to be, at least in my book. And I started as a travel blogger, and I was traveling with clean water filters to developing countries.
Amazing.
And I would work, and I didn't think it would work. So I worked with a marketing agency for about 3 years, quit my corporate job in 2015 with an agency, and I started to do this. And I started carrying these water filters and pitching to brands. I didn't think it was going to work. And it worked. And I was like, wow, shit. I was like, oh, this is working now. I got to do this. And I did that for about 3.5 years. And I made money, but never as successful as I wanted it to be. Mm-hmm. Although, redefining success and what that looks like to me, it was very much of like the presence and being able to like get out there in the world and having people hear my message. And originally I started because, number one, I've always loved to travel, and I was traveling solo.
That's such a huge thing. I always encourage my clients. Well, you've said a couple things already where I like just want to jump in, but I always encourage that because I think it's such a growing learning experience to travel solo. So especially my female clients, I always encourage them to at least have that experience once.
Anybody in general, but females more so. Yeah. Just because society is like, so I grew up Cuban American, right? My parents are Cuban immigrants, amazing parents. And they came to this country with nothing. They actually met on a blind date. So like, what is dating apps now? They met on a blind date. They've been married we just celebrated their 40th.
Oh, like, amazing.
So beautiful. They cannot live without each other. Like, it's so beautiful. And they've been through, and I've seen them, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but like, I've seen them go through the shit, right? And to be where they are today. And I think it's just so amazing. But the way I was raised was very much like, go to school. Yes. First and foremost, get an education. Mm-hmm. Then maybe get a boyfriend, maybe. But like, go get an education, get a job, get married, have kids, get the house, buy the dog. Like in that order, check those boxes.
Yeah, I grew up very strict Italian father, and his was,
you get it.
Yes, that same. These are the steps. Yeah. This is the way. This is the only way.
Yeah.
And I remember so clearly his message was always like, it's not about being happy. It's not. It wasn't. It was about doing those things. And I remember way later in life, and obviously my path did not go that way. Why we're sitting here today doing this. I remember saying something to him. He's like, as long as you're happy. I'm like, whoa, who is this man? Like, where did my strict Italian father go? But yes, like the messaging. Yes.
And my dad was like, my dad was so strict. I was in high school, and I was a senior in high school, class president, like such a good girl. I look back and I'm like, God damn it. Like, you could have done damage and you did nothing. I was an angel. Like in hindsight, I was such a good girl. And my dad would literally be like, I was only allowed to go out one night a week. So it was either Friday or Saturday. I couldn't go out both. And I had to be home. At the time I was a senior, I had to be home at 11 o'clock. But this was the thing though.
I probably had the same curfew. I'm laughing because it's probably exactly the same.
I couldn't go. I had a younger brother and I couldn't go to prom if he didn't come. So I had to find one of my friends to go with him. No. I swear to God. And this is like, when did I graduate? 2007. So this is like 1965.
Oh my God. So what did your father think? Oh my God. Okay. We didn't even talk about our dad. Well, we talked about your dad a little bit in a different context, which we'll get to. Yeah. But we didn't talk about our dads in this way because my dad sounds very similar. And I remember.
Should we introduce them?
Oh God. My dad talks a lot. So
does my dad.
Oh gosh. Okay. So I remember, so now I'm curious your father's thought on your different path, because I remember so I played field hockey in college. And so I only had one opportunity to study abroad, which happened to be the spring after 9/11. Oh, wow. So my dad is like, and I was ready to go to Florence, the whole thing. And my dad's like, nope, absolutely not. You're not going anywhere. So I graduate college and now I'm an adult and I know everything. So I'm like, I'm moving to Europe with my boyfriend. And I remember my dad's head like spinning, but I'm like,
oh my God,
I'm going.
My dad, I don't know when my dad, okay. So I studied abroad my junior fall semester. But when I tell you that I had to go through hell, my dad was like, so I went to school in New York City, I went to Pace University, lived in New York City. My dad was like, you can't, first of all, it was cheaper to study abroad, by the way, than be in New York City. Yeah. So that was like, thank God, because if that wasn't the case, my parents were like, absolutely not. Like, what do you think? We're made of money? Like the money tree is dead. Like it's not there. So my dad was like, okay, fine. You want to go study abroad? This is what you have to do. So he made me come home every weekend from college, be with the family every weekend. No. And I was like, so for a whole semester, that's what I did.
Oh my gosh. In college.
I had to move back home the spring semester because he was like, okay, you want to go for the fall? Like you have to move spring. And then what was the movie with Neil Nesson? The one that just came out, the one at the time, it was about his daughter that got kidnapped.
Oh, Taken.
Oh I almost killed my mother. She was like, we need to see this great movie. So
you're like, no, don't plant any seeds.
The moment that movie finished, my dad was like, I remember sitting in the living room and he looks at me and goes, you're not going anywhere. And I was like, no.
You're like, I did all the things.
I did all the things. I mean, it was somebody who said to him, had like a moment with him. Because my dad said no. I was like, you're not going anywhere. I'm sorry. Like, it's just not happening. I was devastated and I was pissed.
Sure.
And I am my father's daughter. So then I was getting ready to scheme. I was like, oh, he thinks he's going to pick me up this weekend? That shit. I was like, I'm going to be in my dorm. I'm like, he's going to try to find me. No. I was like getting ready to raise hell and flip everything upside down. And one of his friends said to him, Louis, let her go. This is going to change your life. She needs this. And it was one of his clients or whatever. And Livy was her name. And I never forget because I called her afterwards crying. And I was like, thank you so much for saying this. That changed everything.
Isn't it interesting, like those pivotal moments? Those one thing that like
that was the first
changes
time.
The course.
Yeah. That was the first time I left by myself to another country. So then I lived abroad for 6 months and I was a totally different person.
Yeah.
I had so much more confidence in who I was, what I wanted to be, so that when I graduated, and everything happens for a reason. So I studied abroad September 2009. Mm-hmm. And then my younger brother passed away September 2010.
Wow. Oh.
So that was my senior year of college. And so my brother and I were Irish twins. We were a year and a half apart.
Oh my gosh.
His name was Louis. We were super close. Spoken to him hours before he passed away.
Oh my gosh, Jen.
Yeah. And my parents, I started my senior year of college with like a 3.4 GPA. Barely graduated, like a 2.1.
Well, great.
You couldn't tell me anything.
Yeah.
In hindsight, when I look back, I probably shouldn't have gone back to school, but I probably would have never gone back if I didn't. So if I know me, I'm like, everything happens for a reason. Mm-hmm. You finish, like, checked it off, whatever. And my parents were like, listen, we know you're not happy. And I was struggling a lot with like mental health. Like, oh my God, it was a hot mess. I don't remember my senior year.
Well, you dissociate, right?
Yeah.
You're dealing with grief.
And my parents were like, here's a ticket. Go to your happy place.
Wow.
We're not gonna, we'll buy your return ticket when you're ready to come home. So I spent a month in Spain after graduation. I didn't do anything. I slept. I was so depressed. I didn't know that I was depressed at the time. And I was staying with, so when I lived in Spain prior, I stayed with the family, and I was staying with the señora. And she was like the sweetest old lady. Bless her heart. She passed away this year. And I was staying with her, and I remember, the only thing I remember is waking up one day. I'd slept like 18 hours. And she like came into the room, and she brought me soup. She used to cook. And she like sat down, and she like petted my head, and she's like, "You were tired. It's okay. You can sleep. You're always safe here." And I was like,
whoa.
I know.
Huge.
I know. I'm like holding back the tears.
Wow.
It changed
everything. I have chills everywhere.
Yeah.
Just to hear it's okay, right? If this is what you need right now, this is okay. And you're safe to just be.
Yeah.
What, again, these like pivotal
huge
moments.
And I go back to those moments, and I'm like, oh my God, remember that. Right.
But those things that stand out, right? Because there's so much you don't remember. Yes.
And so I went back to New York. I did the thing. I got the job. I went to corporate. I did well, whatever. But my vice was to travel by myself. And I'm like, I'm going to go do this thing. I'm going to go travel by myself. And anywhere I went, I was in a happy place.
But isn't that interesting, right? You come back to the path that we're told we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But there's still this pull to the path that's really meant for you.
Yeah. And then I went to grad school, and I went to grad school in London. And I did that for about a year. And that was a very expensive scapegoat, to be honest. When I look back at that, I'm like, stupid.
Well, now you're thinking about going back to school.
Yes. And I went back, and I was like, so I went there, lived in London, and then I got to travel more. I loved it. I didn't want to leave. I think that my parents, that was their greatest fear, that I would like go somewhere and stay there. But I did. I ended up staying for like months and months and months at a time in certain places. So I came back after grad school. So then now we're in 2013. And then I go back to a corporate job. I'm working in an agency. And I'm right back to the start. Like, I'm miserable.
Yeah.
I'm going out every night. I'm drinking. I'm hanging out. I memean, in the front cover of the book, it was great.
This is what you're supposed to do. This is
a great career. I was working really hard. That was the first time I had my own business. I started a small business, social media business. And so I was a workaholic. I was working 9 to 5, and then I was coming home and like working on the computer and like doing social media posts for my clients and learning all the things. And I was hustling, but I was shoving everything underneath.
Right, which you probably didn't realize at that time, right? There's a narrative that like, I'm busting my ass, I'm building my career.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the thing. And then I'm dating, and I'm meeting these people, men, and I'm just like, oh God, okay, whatever. Next.
We'll get there.
Yeah. And I'm not happy. And so I just had I call it my come to Jesus moment. Like one of my very last, I had several rock bottoms, but one of my very last rock bottoms where I like saw a reflection of myself in the mirror one night coming home drunk. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm not happy. And I had, I was just in a really dark place. And I was like, I believe we are the creators of our reality. And then I had a moment, and I was like, my brother didn't have a choice. Like, he passed away, and I get to be here. And what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck am I doing?
Well, that's how I knew we would arrive here at some point, but that's how we ended our first call, was this idea of choice. And I think it's getting clear on what we want to be choosing, because there is, and we start, we're talking about our fathers, but there's like so many formative years where there is not real choice. We're told like what we're supposed to do and what will make us happy and what will make us successful. Yeah. And then you start to like move through the world, and you're like, okay, I'm doing all the things. On the cover, it looks great, but like I'm still miserable.
Well, it's not even, in our cases, it was definitely like at home behind closed doors, but it was also society.
100%.
Like, you go to school and you're told, do this, do that, do this, do that. Like, you don't have your own autonomy, your own choice to do what you want to do. I went out to dinner with one of my mom's cousins' daughters when I was down in Miami. She is 17, starting to apply to college. She's like, oh, like, where am I going to go? And it's just like really quiet. And we're at dinner. My mom left to go to the bathroom. My mom looks at me and she goes, whatever you're going to tell her. And I started laughing. I was like, just go to the bathroom. And then I was like, so where are you going to go to college? And she's like, oh, I don't know. And she like, you can see her face light up and she's like, well, you know, they told me that you like to travel. And I was like, get the fuck out of here.
Go.
I was like, go. If you need me, call me. You have my number. Text me. I was like, well, you're going to be fine. I was like, listen, if I were you, you speak Spanish really well. Go to Spain. Go have fun. I was like, go to Sevilla. It's safest.
But that's amazing. And I do want to get the egg freezing part because there was no one saying that, right? And that's so amazing. And I think that's one of the intentions of you putting the YouTube video out and documenting it is.
And I told her, I was like, listen, you don't have to rush this process. And that is the biggest mistake that we did, that I did. I was like, if you don't know what you want to do, don't go to school.
But that's what's so amazing, because there's other narratives now being created and there's other ways and paths that are being normalized. And there's people like you saying, hey, you don't have to do that. Like if that's not pulling you, you can, it's okay to like lean into something else. So that's amazing.
And when my, 20 something year old friends are like, oh, I don't know what I want to do with my career, my life. And like, I want to be in a relationship, and like, what about dating and this and that? And I'm just like, yes. And like, you can have it look however you want it to look. It doesn't have to be in the same roadmap that we've been taught. Like,
exactly.
Go freeze that. That's like the beauty of it, right? And like, we spoke about this. I wish I would have done it sooner. I did it at 32.
Yes. Well, I did it at 37. So let's go into that. Tell me like how you learn. Well, we were talking about this off camera. Like neither of us remember how we learned about it. I don't remember how I ended up freezing an extent. It's kind of a blur.
I didn't know anybody that had done it.
I'd known one person that had done it.
I really don't know where I learned about IVF, egg freezing.
Do you remember how you came to that decision to do it?
I don't remember how I learned about it. I knew that because I'd gotten to a place in my career and like that's where I wanted to keep going. Like I want to have that foundation for myself. That dating became less and more of a backseat, right? And I went out and I gave men an opportunity, and I obviously had boyfriends. It just never worked out. A lot of it was timing. And then because 3.5 years of my career I was traveling, it's really hard to hold a relationship.
Absolutely.
You're traveling, right? And then, that slowly pivoted and I began to do more speaking gigs, and that's obviously led me to where I am today. But I still travel and I'm very independent. So I kind of got to a point in my personal romantic relationships where it was a big deal.
Well, and your sister has 4 kids.
We're 4 years apart. She checked all the boxes, and she's a lawyer. She's extremely successful. She's in a beautiful marriage. Her husband, her partners, like it happened for her in that way. And I love that.
Yes.
And like, I think that's beautiful. And it really hasn't happened for me that way. And I realized, I'm like, wow, this is actually a thing. Like men are actually insecure. And I don't think they realize it. Like, I think it's an actual like subconscious behavior, because it's not like they're standing there. I've had like 1 or 2 men in my life, 3 or 4. I don't think about it. Like actually say like, I don't like what you do. I want you to quit your job. Or
really?
You're too much, or you travel too much. Like you need to stay put. Do you ever think about like having a family and staying at home? Like I've literally had men say that. And it's like, yeah, I want all those things. Like I want to be a mom, but I also want to run multi-million-dollar businesses and be taking my kid to fucking soccer. Excuse me.
You can curse. It's fine. I want to do the same thing.
I mean? So like, I think that that's really important. I kind of got to that realization that I kept going on dates and men were like, you're really intimidating. And they were either ready to step into the plate or they weren't.
Well, we've talked about this extensively on this podcast. I've said it numerous times. I want more men on here. We've had one male, but John Berger, author of Datanomics and Make Your Move. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want that perspective. Like we had said on the call, and this might not be, lovely to hear for some men, and we have 2 men in the room with us, but like what is going on? Like intimidation is a word that keeps coming up, insecurity, unreadiness, like that showed up in my relationship. Like I met Rob at 34, I froze at 37 because he wasn't ready. So it's like you posed this question, I agree with you, like what is going on? What is going on with these men?
Like you can come to the plate and you can have all like, and I'm talking about men, right? Like you can show up and you can have all these ducks in order, and then you expect me to follow along, but And I said this to you offline. I was like, they love the theory of an independent woman. In practice, I am very opinionated and I understand that. And I'm also like, if I feel safe, I do lean into my femininity and I do let a man lead. I run a business. I run a team. I am constantly telling people what to do. I love when I meet somebody and they're like, I need you to be ready by this time.
Great.
We're going here. I'm going to pick you up.
Right. I don't have to make the
decisions. I can get down on one knee and be like, marry me now. Like those are a dime a dozen. And it's like, why aren't they doing that more? Right. If we want to play those roles, right. If you want to show up and you want to be the man in the relationship, then go ahead and take it. You know what I mean? Like, just because I run a business and I'm successful in all these things, like, you're looking at it from out here. You haven't gotten the chance.
Well, and you have a very big presence, you know, and we talked about that offline too. It's that because of that, they can look at your social media and assume.
You Google me and you know my entire life.
Right. But then you can also assume who you are, but that's your business
that
side.
Used to be
right.
Such a trigger for me, because I would go on dates and it's like, you're 10 steps ahead. It's not fair. Like, you literally know everything about me. You can manipulate, if you were an asshole, you can manipulate the conversation so much. I mean, by the grace of God, I believe you attract who you are. So I've, to be honest, like, I've been attracted to terrible men, but I have definitely attracted someone that I'm like, oh boy, where did this one come from?
Well, that's important to talk about too, right? And that's where I was at, sort of this pause to recognize your patterns and to recognize if your patterns are unhealthy. Yeah. And I had ones that were, in the moment that I kind of was like, all right, some of this is on me. Things shifted for me, but I think it can go both ways, right? Yeah. I think dating is very hard. And it's hard to meet a good person. And it's hard. It's so funny you say the thing about in theory, because I was getting my hair blown out yesterday and I have all the notes out and I'm getting ready. And she's like, oh, are you studying? And I tell her what the podcast is about. And we start talking about this exact topic. And she's like, men say they want independent women. And she's like, they don't want that. They say they want a strong woman, but they don't want that. I was like, oh my God, we're going to be talking about that tomorrow.
I heard the most amazing thing. This was a couple months ago. And I thought it was great. I forgot where it was, but the woman said she was a therapist, and she said, you're going to ask your partner on a first date 3 things. You're going to ask them, how do they like, if they could be an animal, what would they be? If they could be a body of water, what would they be? And I forgot the third question, but the point was that based on what they would respond, that's the kind of relationships they want mirrored to them, right? So I asked this on a date with a guy, and he said he wanted, this was great. He said his spirit animal, or the kind of animal he would be a dog. And then I was like, oh. And he's like, yeah, because and then I was like, why would you choose a dog? And he said, because they're loyal and they're quiet and they listen. And I was like, and I really looked at him and I was like, oh boy. I was like, I am not the person for you. I was like, weird. I think this is going to end here. But anyways, that was the point. It was very like reflective of the type of person. And then he asked me, he was like, what was your animal? And I was like, a dolphin. And then he was like, why? I was like, because they're beautiful and free. And then he's just looking at me and I'm like,
amazing. Okay, now we have some tools, some questions to ask on a date. I guess that leads me. Where are you in your dating?
Recently single.
Okay.
Ended a relationship a few months ago. Yeah, back to square one.
Well, I think the narratives are so important, because I don't know if I would look at it as square.
Yeah, no, I can't say that. That's not fair. That's definitely not square one.
Yeah.
I am like, I've dated a lot, and I've dated around the world. Like, I've lived in a lot of places. Like I said, I've met some amazing men that have treated me like a queen. And I think the biggest thing has been timing.
Timing's huge.
Timing. Like, I've met men that have wanted to marry me, and I haven't been ready.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. I would literally run the opposite direction. My avoidant attachment was there. And then I've met men that I'm like, I'm ready. And they're like, I'm not, and it sucks.
Yeah. I say this all the time. Timing is so huge. Readiness is so huge. I think that if I had met Rob 2 months earlier, like, I just wouldn't have seen him. Yeah. I wasn't, and the universe tested me in a very big way when I met him, but I was really ready to have that type of person in my life. And I always think too, just, the fate of us both being in places to be ready for a relationship was
they have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was, I think we talked about this offline, like the amount of successful women, or like, it was you. Yeah. We had this conversation that it was like the pool of, when you're a successful woman, the pool of men gets smaller and smaller and smaller, because we have a certain standard, right? Whereas like when men get very successful, they know they can have anything. Mm-hmm. And so they always choose.
That's everything. Literally the numbers and stats are not in women's favor.
Oh my God,
and
it's
then,
like a 1% chance.
Yeah. And John's, which, he said was very controversial for him when he went on his book tour, was this idea of mixed collar dating, because, a successful woman dating a blue collar guy. And many women are like, no, I have this standard, but many of them make great money and are amazing. And I have a blue collar guy and he's amazing. So it's also like opening I think it's understanding our patterns and what's getting in our own way, and then opening ourselves up to different paths
Absolutely.
or visions. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing though, is like letting go of the vision of what has to, I know for me personally, for a long time, it was like, no, he has to do this. He has to look like this. And while obviously there's certain things that you really do enjoy in that person that attracts you to them and is important, like I call it my non-negotiable, right? Like there is a non-negotiable that you should have, but also like all of that fades. Like you're going to get ugly at some point. You're going to get old. Like, you're going to get wrinkly. Like it's life and it's beautiful. And I think it's really about finding that person that internally matches you, right?
Yeah.
And
I think, but I think they're so 100% so hard. And I give credit to everyone that's still out there dating. So much credit. I think there's so much value. And I think this is hard to see in the time if you're stuck in what should be happening at what time, to see the value in your own timeline and to see the value of finding someone later. Yeah. Like for me, finding someone at 34, I think I just had a better understanding of me, who I was. I was more grounded in who I was. I was more clear on what I wanted out of a partnership, because everyone before Rob was like never going to be longevity. So I think there's so much, I think that's, a narrative that I want to continue to reinforce, is that like, there's something really beautiful about having a little bit more time to know yourself before you meet that person.
When I think back to being in my 20s and being in the relationships that I was in, oh my God.
I'm always like, if I,
my God.
Well, it never would have lasted. It would have crashed and burned.
It would have been a disaster. So like, I think to myself, like, yeah, there's beauty in being this age and like getting to know who you are, what you like, what you don't like. And that's just kind of like, the cookie crumbles. And it's also beautiful that you met somebody at a really young age and you've grown together and like you're going to grow together and that's just your life. And that's,
Yes. And everybody, like you said, like some people, for your sister, it laid out that way. For other people, it doesn't. And either way is okay. Like it's just about not getting stuck. For me too, I got really stuck in like comparison and judging myself, especially, and really bad narratives. And thing. Yes, with the baby thing. So yeah, just honoring the value of your timing and where you're at, I think is so important. It's hard. It's not to say that this, like, you just start thinking a different way all of a sudden, but I think there's so much power in shifting the narratives. And that's why I had to stop you and say, you're not starting from scratch. Like you totally have learned something, because we talked about that on the phone. Like, I think this last relationship was this opportunity to see your pattern, right? And maybe think about some other non-negotiables.
It was when I stepped back and I look at it, like now being outside of it, I'm like, oh yes, this guy was the same guy, and so was the other one, and so was the other one, and so was the other one.
See, now you see this, it's going to change everything.
100%.
Yeah.
It already has. Yeah. And so I'm just like, this is interesting, because no more am I withholding who I am or what I want to say, because I don't want to make somebody uncomfortable. Now I'm just like loud and proud about it, right? It makes you uncomfortable, like we could talk about it, but also how much of it is mine?
I just had an incredible phone call with another potential guest it was a funny story that she met her husband on day 2 of her egg freezing. And she was like, gonna hide it or cancel the date. She's like, no, I'm gonna set my alarm. I'm gonna excuse myself. And I won't tell her whole story, because hopefully she'll be here and she'll tell it. But she's like, she hesitated for a second. She's like, no, if he can't handle this, and he could, and he handled it beautifully, and they're married. I wanted to talk quickly about the egg freezing part, but because we had talked about sort of, it is a business, and there is parts of it that are not personalized in a way that it probably should be, and you could feel like you're on a conveyor belt. And I know if you could share your story of how you kind of felt a little bit that way.
So I like I said, I don't remember what planted the seed that like told me, right, you need to go freeze your eggs. But I remember going to my first session, my first consultation. I was on birth control. At this point, I'd been on birth control for like 7 years, or 8 years, something like that. And I go in, and they do the ultrasound, and the doctor's like, well, you're not even a candidate because you don't have enough follicles. And so I'm sitting there on this thing, and I'm like, what? And so my whole life, like, she leaves the room, and I literally feel this huge immense of sadness. I literally, like, went back into the office. She explained to me the whole procedure and everything, which probably should have been first, right? She explained to me the whole procedure and everything. And I was like, hey, got it. And she's like, listen, are you on birth control right now? Actually, no, that's not true. They did explain it to me first. No, they explained it to me first. But her response was very like, you're not even a candidate. Like, let's go talk about this. And so I was like, what does this mean? And she's like, you want to get off birth control? And I was like, yeah, I know this. Like, I need to get off birth control. And then she's like, start taking prenatal vitamins. Like, what's your history? Tell me about your mom, your sister, blah, blah. And like, they're fertile myrtles. Like, my sister literally just 4 kids.
Yeah.
She's 38. Like, Amy, if you're listening, I love you. And so like I was like, okay. And I remember getting in the car and just feeling like shit, man.
Of course.
Like your whole life you've been playing with dolls. Like you want to be a mom. You think you want to be a mom.
Well, that's
right. Is this just like, but I never asked that question, right? Because this is what I grew up with. And I think as women, you do have a maternal instinct. Some women do, some women don't. I definitely have it.
But that's important to normalize too, because some women that don't then think that
they
something's
feel guilty.
Yes. They think something is wrong. I've worked with clients like that too, that they don't have that like desire or instinct. And it's like, something must be wrong with me. No, nothing.
And to be fair, I didn't have this feeling like till I was 32, 31. Like, I didn't have that feeling. I had friends who were married and had babies at like 28, 29. I was like, oh, their baby's so cute. But I didn't either.
Well, I was also still single at 31, 32.
I was single when I did it.
Yeah.
Which was a whole other thing because it just allowed me to question everything. So I took a year. So I did it. I went to go do it in 30. Or 31, whatever. But I took a whole year before I actually did it to get my body ready. So I took all these prenatal vitamins. I stopped birth control. I started eating a little better. I started working out, whatever, just like paying attention to my hormones. Period came back right away. Everything was in the flow. And then I had done tests every 6 months. So like things were moving up and everything was fine. So went to go do the procedure, July of whatever year it was. And I was 32. I'm 34. You do the math. And
terrible.
Yeah. So it's like, whatever. And I finished the procedure and the doctor was like, well, you did great, but we should do this again. When do you want to do this again? And I was like, wait, no. What? And
not like, how are you feeling? Time to process, nothing.
And I'm like, it was straight up like, we need to do it again. And I literally told the nurse, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not doing this. First of all, and it wasn't even the doctor. It was the nurse that called me and was like, the doctor recommends you do this again. So when do you want to schedule your next appointment? I was like,
my God,
no,
how
honey.
impersonal.
I was like, you're on some shit. Because first of all, it's stupid expensive.
But I'm the one on some shit. Because I'm still coming out of
Yeah. And I was like, and now you're pissing me off. And I was like, no, we're not doing it again. I was like, it's ridiculously expensive. I paid for this out of my pocket, number one. And number two, it's tolling on my body. I had a different experience. I have friends, and I told you this, I have friends that have done it and like easy peasy lemon squeezy. And they're younger. So it's your body bounces back faster. So I'm like, that's why you should do it. Like 27, 28. Because then you could store your eggs up to 10 years, right? I think that's oh
my gosh. See, that's the stuff there's so much that I think maybe even longer than that.
I think it's either 10 or 12 years. I don't think it's more than that. And regardless, the younger you do it, the better it'll be for your body.
Right.
It took me a while to bounce back, like the hormones.
Well,
everything.
and I love that. You shared that too. You were so open and everything.
Because
like even before we got on call, I'm like, I know her whole life. I know everything. Like, but yeah, I think that's why it's so incredible to have people like you, especially people that have platforms to be sharing and normalizing, because everybody's experience is different. Like
I get messages all the time from that YouTube video and people are like, they'll ask me the nitty gritty that they don't think about or like that you don't realize. And it's like, how did it affect your body? So I've never had back acne. I was going for back facials for 6 months.
The hormones are like,
my body was detoxing a whole other level. I had gained so much weight. I literally was like, and it was hard for me to get it off. And I was like, but the most important thing was hormonally and mentally. And I did it alone. So I began to question why I was doing it. I'm like, am I doing this because I'm where I'm at right now because I focused on my career over my relationship? And then I felt guilty, right? You go through this like funnel of bullshit.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. It confronts you in so many ways.
Talk about facing your demons.
Yes.
Like I'm in my apartment. I can't go out because I have to inject myself at a certain time. And then afterwards you feel so uncomfortable. I'm bloated, right? I mentally feel like I'm pregnant. My body looks like I'm pregnant. Like I have like a little pouch, right?
Yeah.
And I know I'm not pregnant. So I'm just like running through all these emotions. And I was living alone. I didn't have my dog then. That's why I got my dog.
Yeah.
Because I realized, and I just having all these questions of like, okay, up until this point, Jennifer, what have you done in your life that justifies this? Like, why are you doing this? Like, why do you feel you have to do this? And then I was like, okay, remember when you went on this date? And this was the biggest thing for me, was going on dates and always thinking he's the one I'm going to marry.
So much pressure.
He's the one I'm going to marry. And I was like, and that's exhausting. And even though I tried not to do it, there was this like subconscious part. Like there were times that I went on dates and had great times and we would continuously go on. And then I found myself starting to do that pattern of like pushing just a little bit more. And I'm like, God, stop doing that.
The pressure, the timeline, the milestone, right?
So that was one of the biggest like moments for me. Like when I realized that and I'm like, hey, and I don't do that anymore because I have these eggs, right? And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think subconsciously, maybe once in a while, it still lingers because I have all these friends that are married and they're just in a different place. And I'm going to 2-year-old birthdays and 5-year-old birthdays.
Yeah.
And
and normalizing that too, right? Like you can be so grounded in your own timeline and accept where you are, but still that stuff can still come up, and that's okay, and not judging. And there's, I think as women, especially women that find themselves here, it's like there's so many narratives of blame. Like if I had done this differently, or like if I wasn't so career focused, or all these things. It's like, we shouldn't be blaming ourselves. It should be like straight compassion for all of this.
And in the grand scheme of things, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
That was my come to Jesus moment, because I was like, all right, Jen, where's that time machine?
Right.
Because if I did have one, I wouldn't go back to a career. I would go back to a very specific moment in my life, and who gives a shit about anything else?
Yeah.
So ultimately that was like and then I am a nurturer. I do care. And it's not just about babies. It's about humans and people and just the way I am.
What's your work? I mean, that's your work. Yeah, the work that you
Exactly.
do. Well, I know from your YouTube video, one of the things that you kind of left everybody with was like, do it younger. Is there anything else you would want to leave the audience with before we wrap up?
Question why you're doing it. Don't do it because I say do it younger. Do it because you hope that one day you do want to be a mom. And if the response is that you're not sure, that's okay too. My come to Jesus moment, and the reason why I didn't do it again, was very much like, I know I'm going to be a mom one day, whether it comes from me or I'm raising someone else's child or I'm adopting. I know that one day I'll be a mom, and however God, the universe wants to send that it'll happen.
Beautiful message.
And then just kind of let that go.
Yeah, I love that. And I would expand that why to anything that we're doing. Like, why am I pursuing this career? Why am I pursuing this guy? Like making sure it's totally aligned with you. So yeah, that pause and asking yourself that why. Well, thank you so much for being here. I feel like I could talk to you forever and ever and ever.
Who's going to hate us? They're going to be like,
You're going to get some comments for sure.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible episode with Jen. Please subscribe to our channel if you're enjoying the conversations, and see you back here soon. If you're ready to take charge of your relationship journey, visit quiettheclock.com today to download your free copy of Balancing the Biological Clock, Expert Advice on Handling an Unready Partner. This is a guide I created for those navigating the complex terrain of differing timelines with your partner. It will provide you with exclusive insights on understanding your relationship by sparking meaningful conversations and encouraging you to take unconventional action in the face of life's most important decisions. Again, head over to quiettheclock.com now and claim your free copy of Balancing the Biological Clock, Expert Advice on Handling an Unready Partner.